Hey, well, welcome to the first episode of our CRAVE podcast. We are so excited to be a part of this. And this is a platform that we're using to communicate the gospel of Jesus and allowing God to speak through us. And we're praying that if you're watching, that you're going to be impacted by it today. And so our CRAVE podcast is called CRAVE Unplugged, and just a little bit more relaxed and laid back than what we would usually do. But we're just going to be talking about God today. And so thank you for joining us, and thank you for tuning in. And we're going to jump right into it. So today we got some really cool students with us. We wanted this podcast to be student driven, student led. And so we got some really cool students with us today. To my left, we have Bella. And then next to her, we have Miss Hadli. And then on the far left, we have Mr. Grayson. And super excited that you guys joined us. And so how you guys feeling? Y'all feeling okay?
Yeah. Excited. Thank you for having us. Happy to be here.
Good. Man, so I'm going to start over here with Grayson. We got Grayson over here. Grayson is a senior, right? Come on, shout out to you, getting ready to graduate. And how you feeling? Where are you going to school? Like, I know your graduation's like Monday, which is literally around the corner. So how are you feeling about that?
I'm glad. We've had a couple of days off, this past couple of weeks just to sleep in, to rest. We have some practice coming in too, but I'm excited. I have a lot of family coming, some of my coworkers too. So just to see everyone there is going to be exciting. But yeah, I'm going to be going to Lee University in the fall, majoring in theology and ministry, and I'm super excited. I went to Lee Day, super excited what the Lord's going to do for me there.
Come on, bro. That's awesome.
Not for me, but the Lord's going to use me.
Yeah. Come on. What about you, Miss Bella? We are also a senior, right? Getting ready to graduate from the same school.
Yep.
How are you feeling? What are you doing next?
I'm really excited. I'm excited to just start like a new routine. I've kind of gotten used to being a high school student and going through the same motion all the time. So I'm going to be moving all the way to Tennessee like Grayson is, which is something really new, but I'm really excited for the new thing that the Lord's going to do in my life. I'm also going to be studying theology and ministry. So I'm just excited what opportunities.
Let's go.
What that's gonna bring me. So I'm excited.
Come on. And then Miss Hadli, you're getting ready to be a senior, right? Wrapping up your junior year. How are you feeling about going into senior year and all the things that come with that?
I'm excited. I feel I'm just excited for what's to come. I know all my best friends were seniors this year, so I felt like I kind of like lived that senior experience kind of through them and like watched them do all their activities and like everything that they did. So I'm just excited to do it myself and start something new. And I feel kind of like not alone, but kind of like set apart in a way. So I'm just excited, and I know that God has something good for me this year, and so I'm just excited to see what that holds and what that's gonna look like.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think you just reminded me of something that we kind of say a lot in CRAVE is like, even when you feel like you're alone in certain seasons, you're not necessarily isolated, but you're separated, right? And you're separated for a purpose. And so that's really cool for you to be in a position and in a situation where you're not necessarily alone, right? You're not necessarily isolated, but just separated for what God has for you, right? So it's really cool. But I'm excited for all you guys, and really excited that you guys decided to be a part of this. And so we're going to jump into some stuff today and just talk through some conversations and some questions. And I know like one of the things that we wanted to kind of just talk about in this first episode, this first podcast was some of the pressures, I guess, that come with being a student, right? Being a student leader, being someone that has a certain level of influence, right? That people look to you, people kind of view you as a role model in a lot of ways, and you have influence over them. And so there's a lot that comes with that. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that. There's a lot of expectation, right, that comes with that. And so I know in our conversation of just talking about what did we want to present to our audience, that was something that came up. And so let's just jump right into it, and we'll hear from you guys and whatever you have on your heart to speak about. But I know one of the things that we were talking about was, how do we use like our judgment and discernment when communicating about our struggles, right? How do we use our judgment and discernment when communicating about our struggles? And what's kind of the balance between being like vulnerable and transparent, but also knowing like how to like reserve yourself when you are talking to your peers, because you can't really share everything with your friends and to the people around you. So what's kind of that balance there, and you know, how do you know how to be open and vulnerable with people?
I think for me, the first thing I thought of, it sounds so cliche, but like when you really make your life like revolved around prayer and making that the core center, I feel like everything else will align with that. And for me, it's like when you are constantly seeking the Lord, it's so much easier to hear his voice, and it will help you discern the right people from the wrong people. Not saying that everyone is around you is going to be bad, but some people just aren't safe people to tell, you know, what you're struggling with or what God is doing in your life. And I'm someone who likes to talk a lot. I love to share. And so I feel like a lot of the times, especially if it's something that God is doing in my life, whether I'm struggling or not, I get excited sometimes and I want to share with people. Or even if I'm struggling, I want to let people know like they're not alone. And I just tend to overshare sometimes, not with everyone, but I found myself in so many situations oversharing, and then that kind of biting me in the back, because some people are just going to be haters, and some people don't want to see you succeed, especially in the ministry. So I feel like when you have a constant life of prayer, it's so much easier to discern what people you can tell, what you're struggling with, or what God is doing in your life. And so it will be easier for you to just know this person is not someone I can tell. And also just being okay with not telling everyone everything. Sometimes we're called to just be set apart for a season, or not isolated, but set apart. And sometimes God is going to be the only person that you can tell your struggles to, or open up with, or even just finding a leader or your family, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
If I could just follow up real quick before you guys jump in, do you ever feel like sharing with people has kind of changed like their perception of you as a person, or just like as a leader? Like if you've shared at times, like it can kind of change the way that people look at you? Yeah.
Well, I found myself a lot, if I'm when I get excited about something, especially like in the last year, I learned that a lot. I was in a season where I was just learning so much about myself and things God was doing in my life, and I was so excited, and I found myself sharing that with people, and those people just weren't on the same level as me. Not to sound prideful or you know, arrogant about anything, but those people didn't have the same relationship with Jesus that I did, so therefore they didn't understand that. And I feel like it could have caused jealousy, or you know, and that person had a negative response, and it made me feel like what God was doing in my life wasn't special. And so I think that a lot of the times people can get jealous about you, and then have some sort of perception of you, and they think that maybe you're arrogant or maybe you're prideful about something, but really you're just excited and want to share what God is doing in your life.
That's good.
I found myself, just like Hadli, a lot of times the Lord has either spoken something to me or something has been confirmed, and I have went to people around me to sort of get a sense of validation. Like if I had to run things by people to know if this was true, if this was good, if this sounds good, if this sounds like what I'm walking through. And it's something that the Lord directly spoke to me, and I've had to go to people and be like, hey, like he told me this, like, hey, I found out this about myself, he finally answered a prayer about this. And in going and desiring validation, I in turn, like, I got confused. I became confused because they were warping what I had told them out of a secret place, and they had been like, are you sure he really said that? Like, are you sure you really have that? Are you sure you know how to do this? Are you sure that's what you want to do? And just time and time again, I've been proven that I don't need to run things that the Lord speaks to me through people, because they're always going to fail me. There's always going to be a little part in them, not in everyone, but a lot of the times people are like, well, why didn't he tell me that? It's a pride thing, or it's a jealousy thing. And a lot of times people can warp things and like make them dirty when they were meant to be something that was beautiful, that the Lord spoke to you in a secret place. So I've come to learn that not everything that the Lord speaks to me is something that I need to share with everyone. And like Hadley, I love sharing things. Like I want to be relatable to people. I want to be able to like seem vulnerable. I want to be able to be like on the same level with people. And a lot of times he's calling me not to be on the same level with people. So people who are not like-minded, and I'm sharing something that they've never heard or seems foreign to them, they in turn take it and warp it to something that it was never meant to be.
Yeah, that is so good. And I had to learn that. I'm a little bit older than you guys, but I did have to learn that when I was like in my earlier 20s, that what the Lord speaks to you in that secret place isn't for everyone, right? And sometimes it can diminish the vision that he's giving you. And it can kind of cause you to start doubting now if that's really what he said. And sometimes you just want to get around the right people that are going to affirm that vision and affirm that dream, rather than spew lies on it or you know, put it in a dark light that's going to diminish that. And so I think it's beautiful that you're learning that, and that you've learned that you can't tell everyone what the Lord has given to you in the secret place. And here's what I've learned too, man, that when we get to a place where we understand not everything that the Lord shares with us in the secret place needs to be shared publicly, he begins to trust us more. Right? So, you know, if the Lord is sharing something with me that he's calling me to do, or a place he's leading me to, or whatever it may be, if I'm so eager to go and share it with everyone, now the Lord may be looking like, I don't know how well I can trust you now with the next thing that I want to give you, right? So when he entrusts us with something in the secret place, it's our job to protect it, right? So that's a beautiful thing. But I don't know. What about you, Grayson?
Yeah, kind of going back to the main question, that's definitely something that I've kind of thought through, is like how much I should share about like what I'm struggling with, just kind of being vulnerable. Because for me, it's very difficult to kind of put on a front and like a mask and like make everything seem that I'm fine or I'm not struggling with things. In all reality, sometimes I really do struggle with things. But I was thinking kind of yesterday, like lying in bed before I was going to do this, I was just thinking about this question. And I think a really important part of it is, as humans, we're tainted, like we're very fleshly minded, like we're in fleshly beings. So like when we see people, we can't look at the heart as God like looks at the heart. Like for instance, like God looks at the heart, he can see past the things that we go through because he forgives us because of Jesus. But us as humans, like we're so caught up in this natural world. So when we see things, when we're very vulnerable and like we say that we're doing this or struggling with this, and we're very detailed in that, us as humans, it's hard for us to see past those things because we put labels on things. We make things as like, you know, very black and white, whereas God can like see past those things. So kind of just being very vulnerable, like more in private, like with accountability, I think plays a big part. But we also have to seek after that and like continue to like seek after that. We can't just be vulnerable once, because we're going to struggle like multiple times. So just continuing to seek vulnerability or seek accountability out and seeking mentors is definitely important in that.
Yeah. Do you guys ever feel like was there ever a point in your life where you weren't as vulnerable or you weren't as open, whether that was talking about your life or whether that was talking about the things of God? Was there ever a point where you struggled to be vulnerable or you struggled to open up, you know what I mean, about the things that you were dealing with?
I think it's kind of, for me, like a cycle. I think sometimes they're easier than others. The seasons that, I don't know, when either like the sin is greater or it's just something you might be like insecure about that you're struggling with. Those things for me are definitely harder to share, but the sins that I'm struggling with that are more known to people, that more people struggle with than others, I'm easier to open up about those things because then you don't feel alone. And so for me, I think it's just an off and on thing. I don't think it's like something that I've totally grown from, because I still struggle with it to this day, you know, being vulnerable. And also I am a pastor's kid, so opening up to people is a little bit harder around me because you never know who's going to tell who, and seeing people who have hurt my parents in the church and them not being able to trust everyone around you, like it's kind of like a learning process. And so I think that it's not just a total switch that's happened in my life. It's kind of a off and on thing. Some seasons are just easier to open up than others, and also just depending upon the people around you.
Yeah, that's good. What about you guys?
I was gonna say really quick, I think a lot of times when we struggle with things, or when we say struggling, like we go through sin issues and maybe sin cycles and things like that, a lot of times, like, kind of we do them in private, and a lot of times we kind of find pleasure in them because not a lot of people see that. And I think it's very easy for us, like I think of that verse in John where it says people love darkness and they didn't want the light to expose that. A lot of times that can be us, and that can still be me a lot of times, even to this day, where I enjoy those things I do in private, because I don't want those things to be brought to the light, or I want to live a double life. But keeping those things, like wanting to change, sometimes we don't see that struggle as really a struggle, but we find like pleasure in those things. But I think when we go through an experience like fall retreat, for me, is when my life kind of switched around and I really experienced the power of God and the Holy Spirit moving in my life. I know right from wrong, like deep in my heart, like I know right from wrong. And I know that the things I do in private are wrong and need to be talked about. But it's a matter of surrendering that will of me wanting to continue to find pleasure in those things when putting them in the light and talking about it and accountability and things like that.
That's good.
Yeah, I really feel like just talking about, like, we talk a lot about secret sin, like in our youth ministry, right? In CRAVE, and how those things keep you hidden, right? And it keeps you in a place of shame where you don't want to be seen that way, or you don't want those things to come to the light, because now what are people going to think? What are people going to say? How are they going to feel about me, right? And we, especially as people who have influence and who are leaders or viewed as leaders, it can change the way that people see you as a leader. And so, oh man, what are they going to think about me? How are they going to feel about me? And we think I'm better off keeping this a secret than I am being vulnerable and open with it and actually exposing it in the right context with the right people, right? Accountability. But the enemy would love nothing more than to play this trick in our mind to say that, nah, you're better off just keeping that hidden. No one needs to really know about that. And not everyone does, but there are people who should. And those are the people who will be accountable to you and lead you and guide you through that. So it's kind of leading me to my next thought and question is, like, on accountability. And I know, Grayson, you talked a little bit about accountability, but how does accountability play a role in your Christian walk, like in your journey? Do you have accountability? What does that look like for you? Do you see that as something, important in your life, or what are your thoughts on accountability?
You can go.
Okay. I definitely would say that I think everyone who is wholeheartedly, not just saying this, but like wholeheartedly is trying to pursue a life that is pleasing to Christ, and you want to look more like Jesus, I think everyone needs some sort of accountability in their life. And I'm not just saying like anyone, like any person that you trust, like this has to be someone who you have seen God is working in their lives. They're trustworthy. Other people also look at them as trustworthy. And I think it's also something that you should be praying about, not just something like you just make a choice like, oh, this person is in a place of leadership. Not everyone who's in a place of leadership is worthy of being like accountability in your life. I've seen that accountability, the right accountability, has led me to be more comfortable in being vulnerable, because I've seen them in places of vulnerability, which allows me to be confident that I can be vulnerable and not be like dirty and shameful, because I found so much freedom in being vulnerable and in being honest and going to those places of accountability that want the best for me, not just want to hear the bad things that I'm doing or that I have done, just to use it as something against me or to look at me differently, but people who truly want to help you and who want to see you succeed, because they can tell you, hey, I've been in that place before, let me help you. I understand what you're going through. I understand how you're feeling. Let me help you. And not just people who tell you what you want to hear, but what you need to hear. Like if you're constantly making a mistake, like, hey, maybe you need to set up these boundaries. Maybe you need to do this. Maybe you need to do that. Like people who truly want to see you flourish. And I feel like accountability is extremely essential in your everyday Christian walk, because we mess up. And if we don't have accountability and we're just living in the sin and we feel like it's okay, but we feel like we're too shameful to go to anyone, we're going to stay in that cycle, because I was in that cycle. And until I humbled myself, because it was definitely a pride issue for me that I didn't want anybody to know when I messed up. So when I humbled myself and allowed myself to be poured into by people who have been where I am, it's allowed me to be more vulnerable and to look more like Jesus in my walk. So I definitely think accountability is essential for everyone.
That's so good.
When you said accountability, I thought of pride, and like Bella was saying, we say this in our youth group a lot, and I know our pastors say it, but the moment that you think that you're too good for accountability or any of that is the moment that you need to check yourself, because it's so important, not just as people, but as Christians, to stay humble and really realize that like we are nothing without Christ. And like we as just people, like our human nature is to mess up and to sin. So the moment that we think that we can overcome our sin or our temptations by ourselves, like who are we to think that we can overcome that? Like we're just as normal as any other person in the world who's also struggling. So first of all, you can't do that without Jesus. And then second of all, you need someone constantly reminding you, especially for someone like me. Like I'm very stubborn. I even sometimes run from accountability and run from people trying to tell me what I need to do and this and this and this, because sometimes I do become prideful and I think that, oh, I have Jesus. I'm talking to Jesus. I'll be okay. Like, yes, he can be your accountability, but you need someone physical constantly in your face telling you like that you can be honest with and that you're okay with them being honest with you. And I think it's also just a heart posture of being okay with someone telling you when you're wrong, especially if you get like if you get offended easily, like you need to change your mindset, because like without accountability, we really are just going to struggle, and it's going to give the enemy more room to just come in, and it's going to open doors that we can't face by ourselves. So
yeah. And just to jump in real quick, you both said something that we kind of love to stress, is that you don't want accountability that's going to just tell you what you want to hear, right? Because I think sometimes we can get into a place where we know when we're doing wrong things, right? We know when we're sinning. We know when we're out of the will of God. And so instead of fully returning to the will of God, we will set up parameters that look like we're in the will of God, but really we're not. And sometimes who we choose as accountability aids that. So, I have accountability, so I'm in the will of God. Yeah, but you have accountability that's just telling you what you want to hear. You don't have accountability that's actually bringing correction. And we see Jesus as a good shepherd, right? And a part of being a good shepherd is to correct the sheep at time, right? And so that person or those people who are accountable to you should have a place in your life where they can provide correction. And the thing about correction is it's not always beautiful. It doesn't always feel good. Like you said, Hadli, like if you're easily offended, you probably just need to check yourself and receive the correction. Because ultimately, if, like you said, Bella, if it's someone or a group of people, whoever in your life that you're accountable to, if they genuinely love you and they genuinely want to see you succeed and they want to see you walk in the purpose that God has for you, you have to know that the correction is coming from a place of love, right? And so because it's coming from a place of love, I can't allow the spirit of offense to now disrupt me receiving that, because ultimately the correction is going to put me in a place of redirection. So I'm corrected by the people who are shepherding me and leading me and guiding me. But because I'm corrected, now I can be redirected and placed back in the will of God and back on track, right? So that accountability factor is essential. And I think in our generation, I'm a little bit older, but in our generation, right? No one likes accountability. You know, like everyone, I say it all the time, like everyone loves the good stuff. Like we all love to worship God and go to these amazing, conferences and worship nights, and we can run to the altar and cry out. But then the minute somebody says, hey, I saw you post that on Instagram, that I don't know, does that represent God well? Oh, right? Like, how dare you?
God forbid.
And it's like, no, like you want to live for God, but you don't want the accountability and the discipline that comes with walking with Jesus. And I think that we got that misunderstood, and we're sadly mistaken to believe we can, like you said, do this on our own without that accountability. So I don't know. What do you think, Grayson?
Yeah, I was gonna add to that. You talked about discipline, and I think that's definitely a big part of accountability. Is oftentimes we don't see ourselves needing accountability, but it's a matter of like disciplining ourselves and like going to someone even if we don't feel like it or we think we don't need it. Like just staying like in constant contact, and like I'm not perfect at that. I'm not very good at it, if I'm being honest. But it's a matter of do you really want to grow, and if you do want to grow, sometimes it takes a lot of discipline to grow, and it takes a lot of times where you don't want to do things but you still do them because you know it's the right thing to do. And I think I've heard like a quote from a movie or something. It's like oftentimes doing the right thing is the hardest thing to do. And a lot of times we have to like kind of deny our flesh, crucify our flesh, like what Jesus talks about. Because we so often want to have that double-minded or like that double lifestyle where we do things in private, we run from accountability, but then we run to the altar on Sunday and we do these things because we want to have the feelings of both sin and then also like worship. And we try to, in our fleshly minds, we try to juggle both things. But it's a matter of, what do you really going to surrender your life to? Is it God, which is not always going to be feelings, roses and butterflies, but it's the right path, and it leads to eternal life. And we might not see it here now, but it's a matter of surrendering that daily and crucifying yourself daily.
Yeah. And you hit on that, bro. Like,
so good.
It's hard. That's the thing about accountability. That's the thing about walking with Jesus is it can be challenging, And I think even like with pastors and leaders or as students, leaders that people look to, even on your social media or whatever it could be, it could look like, man, like they've got it all together. Like they're walking with God, like they're living this thing out. Like, they post scriptures and they're leading worship or they're speaking at their youth group. And it's like, like I am doing all that, but I'm also walking through struggles and I'm also walking through challenges that I go through. Right. And so another piece of this, as someone who is a leader or influential, whatever it may be, sometimes we can struggle with people seeking, right? Or seeking the attention of people and people pleasing. There we go. I said people seeking, people pleasing and seeking the attention of people, right? Do you guys feel like students today, can maybe fall into the trap of almost like because you have like a position or like because you have a place in your youth group or in your school, whatever it may be, now you're like, you kind of like seek for that like attention and like seek for the applause of people and like you want everyone to think that like you're this good person and like you've got it all together. Like, do you feel like students fall into that trap? Do you feel like you've ever fallen into that trap of people pleasing and attention seeking? And what does that look like for you?
You guys got it?
I think that's something we all three struggle with. I know I've talked separately about this with both of them. We all go to the same school, by the way. But I think that I even like, I don't know, I've talked to you guys about this. But I think that people pleasing is such a hard thing to struggle with because I'm someone that feels the need to be validated by people in order to feel good about myself sometimes. And that's always been something I've struggled with, but that's the moment that I just have to go to God and realize like you're the only one that can fill this hole in my heart. And so I found that if I get to a position or if I get to lead this song, if I get to speak in CRAVE this week, when you get this, obviously there's going to be attention that comes with that. And for me in this season, it's more just praying when you get an opportunity, like, thank you, Jesus, for this, and praising through all of that. And I feel like for me, that will just eliminate or help eliminate the idea that I need people to validate this and make me feel like sometimes it makes you feel like you got there on your own. And immediately that's the part, it's like you have to turn this back to God and thank him for it. So I think for me, it's just realizing that like at the end of the day, no matter what anyone says to you, like it really won't make you feel good at the end of the day. Like it's really just what God says about you. And I know people say that all the time, but it really is so true. Like nothing else really matters at the end of the day. So I think for me, it's just something that I've struggled with, but have also learned through struggling with it that people really don't make you feel good at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's good.
Bella, you can go.
Okay. I think the moment, this is definitely something that I struggle with a lot. Like, honestly, like, pride, and not even like that I want to be prideful, but just like sometimes, like, I think that I'm better than people sometimes. Like, honestly, like, sometimes, not that, I know that sounds horrible, but like, honestly, I think like, oh, I know I could do that better. I know I could.
That's so real.
Like, honestly, like, who doesn't think that sometimes? Like, honestly, and especially in a place where I sing on the worship team at church, and I'm in like leadership positions at school and here, and even doing this podcast, it's like, we're sinful, so it comes with the opportunities come with like I know I could do this, I know I got picked, like, but the moment that I realized that it's not about me, like, all of those things just like go away. And I can't just like tell myself like, oh, it's not about me. Like, I can't just tell myself that. Like, I have to constantly pray and have people, like my mom, for example, I will go to her like sometimes after I do something. I'm like, oh, how did I sound? Like, how did I do? And she'll be like, I'm not answering that. And I'm like, please just tell me. Like, I just want to know. And it's like the need, like, I don't even know where it came from, but just the need to be validated and to be seen by man has been something that I struggle with, and I still struggle with. It wasn't as bad as it used to be, but definitely something that I still struggle with. But the moment that I realize that it's not about me and who I'm doing it for, it's like, why are you doing it for yourself? Like, you're singing about me, but you're worried what people are thinking about you. Like, how does that make sense? You know, It's like, it's not about you. It's never been about you. You did not get here on your own. Like Hadli said, like, you didn't give yourself that voice and that ability and those talents and those that anointing. Like, I gave that to you. So you need to give it all back to me. And it's not about you. It never has been about you. And yeah, I think people seeking and attention seeking is something that we all struggle with, especially if you're on a platform, because I think you've talked about this before, like, after you speak, someone's like, wow, like, you sounded so great, like, you said so many amazing things, like, you're such a good speaker. And every time you want to like accept the compliment, but let them know that it's not me. Like, it's not me that you're seeing, it's God in me that you're seeing. So I think also what would help people with people seeking and attention seeking is when people compliment you or you get some sort of attention, you remember to bring it back to the one who put you in that position, you know? So
it's like this idea of like deflecting. Like you said, like, anytime I have an opportunity to preach the gospel or do anything, I want to deflect the glory. And we can get into some deep stuff with that, but we're never called to touch the glory. You know, and you see it all throughout scripture. You even see it like throughout our history. The minute we begin to touch the glory is the minute we fall. And so for me, I never want to be in a place where I'm being glorified. Who am I to be glorified? I don't belong here, right? So for me, my response is always, how can I deflect this, but then point it back to him, right? So, you know, the compliments are good, right? It's like, oh, like, that's cool, like, thank you, right? Like, that's awesome. But, you know, it's never just me, like, and it's funny too. Some people would disagree with this too, but it's funny. Like, I heard someone say one time, you know, like, they were like, oh, like, I hate when people say, like, oh, it was all God, like, oh, thank you, like, but it was all God. It's like, no, like, it wasn't all God, like, it was a little bit of you, because like, if it was all God, it would have been way better, right? Like, but it was a little bit of you because God had to use you, right? So he used you to get a message through you, or he used you to sing through you, or whatever the case may have been. But it was a little bit of you, because if it was all God, we would all be on our faces, right? But so we have an opportunity to like partner with him in ministry and leadership and, you know, living our life, whatever it might be. We have an opportunity to partner with him. But we're never called to touch the glory. Even in that partnership with him in doing the work of the kingdom, it's still a partnership that is really just like, I just get to be a part of this, but really, like, it's about this is him, you know? And so that's the beauty in that. But I don't know, do you struggle with that, Grayson? Like the people pleasing?
Sure.
Like,
I definitely struggle with that. I just wanted to like kind of add on to what Bella was saying, like having that heart posture and like that mindset of like, it's not me, like this wasn't like from me, like how I can sing, how I can talk, that's not from me. That takes a lot of surrender, and that takes a lot of time knowing who you're surrendering to. And I know we talked about this last time. In order to trust God and not seek like man's approval, we have to know God for who he is and that he is trustworthy. And how we do that is by getting in his word and knowing him and reading through the scriptures and talking through those things. Because if you expect to like just go on stage and have all these big moments, but then you don't really trust God, like when the time comes where you're feeling challenged, you're going to want to go to man first, and you want to look for man's approval. So if we just having that just time in God's word is what kind of gives that surrender, that daily like surrender that we have. But we have to know God first, because that is kind of what we were talking about last time. It's like that knowledge of him is what kind of brings forth everything else, like all the virtues, all the brotherly love. That one verse in Peter talks about that. But we have to first, the knowledge of Jesus is what stems everything else in our life.
Yeah, I love that. Grayson's talking about, we do talk about accountability and stuff like that. I'm gonna just be real. Grayson and I, we sit down and we look at the scriptures together, man, and we just talk through things. And so we did talk about that last time we got together, and you know what I mean. I was actually encouraged by it just as much as you were, But that's the beauty in it, right? But I had this thought too. Sometimes I don't know if you guys ever experienced this, where because you are seeking the approval of man, right, and you're seeking that attention, or you may be a person who you just want everyone to like you, and you want everyone to love you. That's the whole people pleasing concept, right? Right. Sometimes we can fall into a place where we are placing the opinions of man over the opinion of God. Right. And like what he says about us and who he has called us to be. And instead of being confident in what he's saying, you've lost your confidence because you've allowed the opinion of man to kind of like overshadow the voice of God. Have you guys ever felt like that the voices of everyone else, or like the voice of people and man, has just overshadowed or like overpowered like the voice of God in your life?
1,000%. Yeah.
What do you think of that, Bella? Like, could you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah. This is still something that I definitely do struggle with. I think, like I said earlier, with going to man to conjure up some sort of like validation and like approval, that has been like, I will do something for God or for the kingdom, and before going to him and thanking him and talking to him about it, I will immediately go to some earthly, like some person here, and talk to them about it and ask them, and try to get some sort of validation from them instead of going to the one who gave me the opportunity. And in that, I've definitely found myself in places where I've valued what people see me as, how they see me, what they think of me over my creator. And that has like put me in such a dark place, because people are conditional. People's responses are conditional. People are not always going to tell you what you want to hear, and God's not always going to tell you what you want to hear either, but it comes from God. So it's comforting, and it's like it's validating. And that's what I had to learn, was me going to people and getting validation from them has never satisfied me. And the voices are just like overwhelming, because you hear so many of them, and they're all different, and they're all telling you things that maybe you want to hear, and then there's something over here, and it's like you're questioning it, and it's not sound, it's not affirming, it doesn't confirm anything in your life. And I found myself just going to so many different people and hearing so many different things, trying to find the truth, trying to differ between things and find who I am in that. And that's never a place that God has called me to be in. When his voice is supposed to be the loudest, I've allowed people to magnify their voices in my life by going to them and asking for their opinions. And that's triumphed over the one opinion that matters the most, So
yeah,
I've definitely found myself in that place, and I still do find myself in that place, but it's a matter of like, this is not about me. I don't need to go to people to hear about myself. Like, you can go and find all the things that you want in the people on this earth, you can find in the Lord, even better.
Yeah.
Like, even better. It's just like you're just constantly finding things about yourself and him, and in that you like, you're so comforted and you just are validated in that, and he's just like never ending. It's like you don't need to go to the people on this earth to affirm who you are, you know, like, and I know it's hard and everybody does it, and it's just extremely hard, and you don't see a lot of people going immediately to God to be affirmed, but I just think it's all about what, like, how you view yourself, and how it's just a matter of getting to know his love. I think when you know his love and you know what he says about you, you're so much more prone to go to him to hear about yourself than the people in this world. So definitely,
And I feel like it has a positive and negative too. In the sense of like you going to people for that validation or for those opinions, whether it's a good or bad opinion, like it can still have like a negative or positive effect on you. Were you gonna say something, Grayson?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, because I've dealt with this a lot, and one of the like solutions that I found is prayer. And I know it talks about that in scripture, where it says, like, with prayer and supplication, make your request known to God, and the peace, the supernatural peace that surpasses all understanding will guard your mind. And those moments where I'm getting anxious in my mind, or I'm wanting to run to my friends or run to my teachers and ask, hey, how did I sound? How did I do? What I do is I just like take a moment to just pray, say, God, you know, this is not from you. This anxiety is not from you. And I just pray through that. I'm like, God, this is for you. Kind of like what Bella said earlier, like surrendering that all to God and having that like reminder, like reminding yourself that this is not for me or for my own benefit, but it's for God's glory. But that prayer, like, you'll be surprised how quick that peace will cover you, and that peace will calm you down. Just taking a moment to plug into the supernatural. And I know I was thinking of that verse too in Colossians, where it says to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. When you're plugged in spiritually to God in prayer, that peace will guard you continually, and that life will flourish like daily. But when we get caught up in the carnal world with this tangible things like people's approvals, opinions, we start to that not only brings death eventually, because we're not living towards eternal life in the will of God, but it also brings corruption and like chaos and anxiety and all these other things. And that's why sometimes we run all the way back to the world, because we the Christian walk, doing all these things, is so much pressure and so much anxiety. So we just totally say, enough with that. I'm just going to do what I want to do, because there's no guilt, there's no shame, there's no anxiety. But that's a false sense of freedom. And that's what I've been learning and been studying. And Peter, it talks about that you're a slave to whatever controls you. If you're totally, giving yourself over to whatever music you want to listen to, whatever you want to say, however you want to walk, all these different things, you're giving yourself over to that. You have no discipline. You're just like, I'm going to quote another scripture. In Proverbs, it says, like a dog who returns to its own vomit, a fool repeats his own folly.
Come on.
And, I deal with this too. I'm that dog a lot of times, and I think we can't be that dog where we return to our vomit and we continue to repeat our folly. But we will find no true peace in that. It's gonna bring forth death, like separation from God. That's what the wrath of God is on sin and ungodliness. But when we when we go through those things and we get connected to the spiritual, that brings the peace. And when we say disciplined in that's what eventually brings forth life.
Yeah. Man, come on. Grayson's over here spitting out scriptures like it's nothing. He's just like, boom, boom, boom. I love it, man. And I think too, man, that the whole concept about, I don't know why I'm stuck on the shepherd and the sheep, but the whole concept about the shepherd and the sheep, the sheep know his voice, right? The voice of the stranger they won't follow. And so it's almost like in the midst of all the voices around us and the people and the opinions of people, we know his voice when we're closer to him, right? And so the voices will still be there. They'll always be there. The people will still be there. They'll always be there saying whatever they want to say. Sometimes people give their opinions unsolicited. Like, I don't even want your opinion, yet you're still giving it, right? So they're going to be there with their opinions. However, it's our responsibility to stay close to the shepherd so that in the midst of the voices, we know his voice, right? And we are able to respond to his voice. But something that I think is like a challenge for this generation, right, and for our culture is our confidence in God, right? And so people pleasing and attention seeking, if we're being real and we're being honest, is really just a lack of confidence in God. Because if I had confidence in him, I would not need your approval. Right? Good. If I understood the approval of my Father, your approval really means nothing to me, right? So how do you guys feel like, or let me say it this way, why do you guys feel like it's so challenging for people in this age group and in this culture today to find that confidence in God, you know, where we do run to other things for validation or to feel good, right? Or to, I don't know, have some sense of peace and comfort. Why does it seem like it's such a challenge to find that confidence in God?
I think it all just goes back to the voices around, because our world, and especially this generation, is just so caught up in the worldly things and social media. And I know for me, like, I'll always say certain things and like random facts and things like that. My mom will be like, "Where did you learn that?" She'll be like, "Did you learn that from TikTok?" And I'll be like, "Oh, yeah." And she's like, "Okay, so then check your sources, because like I don't know if that's right." And I've found myself in that place a lot of times, but just like makes me think, like, not even just TikTok, but you can connect that with so many things. Like people have their own opinions about everything, bro. Like I'm reading a book right now. It's for school, but it's about this family, and it's called Becoming Free Indeed. And it's about this family, and their names are the Duggars, and they have like 16 children. And they grew up living this way that they had to only wear long skirts, they could only have long hair, they could only do this and this and this, but their views of life were man-made, but they were based on the Bible. And in this, it's called like disentangling, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but she finds the stories about the freedom she found after she got out of the house. And through her freedom, her whole family found freedom. And through this, she's talking about a man-made belief that her parents like started believing in, but it was made by a man, and his name was Bill Gothard. And Bill Gothard was this older man, and he had conferences, he had books that basically taught parents how to raise their children and beliefs about God. And these man-made beliefs were based on the Bible, in his opinion. And he said that this is the only way that the Bible says to live. And so through this, her parents were basically basing their faith off of a man. And I think so many times we tend to do that, base it off of our parents, or for me, it's my parents. Like growing up, I was always like, oh yeah, I'm saved. Like my parents are pastors. I go to church every week. I do this and this and this. It was never about doing all of this. Like they didn't have these big church services back in the Bible, you know, like it was about your personal relationship with the Lord. Not saying that stuff isn't important, because it is, but that's not what it's about. And so I think that nowadays we are so content in finding our opinions and beliefs based off of other people. And for me, like, I'm kind of lazy, so I don't always like go to check the facts for myself. And so I've even found things about the Bible on TikTok or Reels or social media, whatever that may be, and I've based my beliefs off of man. And that is so wrong. And I know that makes God sad, because that was never his intent for us. He wants us to look for ourselves, seek and you will find, and knock and the door will be open to you. Like, and so I think I just connected that story because their family didn't know that those beliefs were wrong. But they never checked for themselves. They never read the Bible. The Bible doesn't say you have to do this and this and this to live a certain way. And through her freedom, everyone in her family found freedom.
That's amazing.
And not saying that those beliefs are wrong, but just the fact that you can only live this way. And the fact that her family based it off of a man, based their faith when they were too lazy to check themselves. And a lot of times that can be us, especially just as teenagers. Like, we're lazy, and when we can look up something on Google instead of going to the word and reading it ourselves, I think that's what you asked. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, just like talking about our confidence, like why do we like look at other things to find our confidence instead of like our confidence in God?
Yeah,
you know?
so I think it's so important to find our confidence in God, because nowadays we're just so content with man, and we think that man is so smart, when in reality none of us are smart but God. So I think it's important, especially now.
Yo, shout out to Google though. I'm not gonna lie.
I love Google.
I definitely Google a lot of things, man. I be Googling everything. But what is the name of this book?
It's called Becoming Free Indeed.
That's
a really
crazy.
good book.
I don't know.
Sponsored.
So side note, something about me, y'all know this probably, but I love like docu-series and stuff like that. Like we watched one, I love like docu-series and stuff like that. So that sounds like one of those, like, I don't know, like docu-series that like I would be into. So
yeah, it was a show that I actually used to watch with my grandma, and it was about these like 16 kids, and they were named the Duggars, and I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it was on,
so there is a show?
It was on TLC. So it was about these 16 kids, and
shout out TLC.
Yeah, we love TLC. But it was about these 16 kids, and like they could only live a certain way, they could only do court dating, it was basically like an arranged marriage type thing in their family. And through this, no one knew what was actually going on outside of TV. And their family got so much hate. And actually the whole book is basically, her name is Ginger, and it's basically about her fear. And she had an extreme fear of man, and extreme want to people please, and that was because she was literally put on television from the moment she was like 7 years old.
Wow.
And so her whole life she would always read these Google like descriptions about her and her family and what people could say about her, and from these negative things that people said, that's what she based her opinion off of. And her whole life was about her fear of man, and if she doesn't do this, like the whole reason, she never thought that the Bill Gothard teachings were wrong. She never thought they were wrong, but she thought that if she didn't do these things, that God wouldn't love her the same. And her whole family, like, it was just really sad, because her whole family thought that if you didn't live this way, you were basically going to go to hell. And so many other people were watching this show, probably then basing their faith off of these people. And so it was just this whole train of, but as soon as she found her freedom, so many other people were disentangled, and that's what the whole book is about.
Wow. That's powerful.
Yeah.
So I feel like that kind of just wraps up that question, like, of why do we go to other things, and like why do we go to man to find confidence instead of our confidence in God. Would you guys speak to just for a moment, like, how would you encourage students, how would you encourage this generation to find confidence in God and find confidence in who they are in their walk with God? How would you encourage people to get to a place of confidence in their walk with God? Just before we kind of wrap this up, would you guys speak to that and kind of just encourage some of the people who may be watching how to get to a place of confidence in God and who you are, right? Because we kind of talked about the approval of man, right? We kind of talked about how we can struggle at times to open up and be vulnerable. Yeah. We've covered a lot, honestly, in this time, but just speak to, finding our confidence in God and who we are, regardless of what the world may say, and what culture may say.
Yeah, I would say just finding that confidence and like growth in your Christian walk in general. Pastor Bree talked about this message, and last time that we met, we went over this as well. But she talked about in 1 Peter that the sufferings and going through suffering, and maybe when we don't feel the emotions or the feelings, that's what often produces the greatest growth, and that's what transforms you into Jesus. Is when you go through those sufferings and when you discipline yourself when you don't feel like it, when you do the right thing when it's hard. So I would say to find that confidence in your walk with God and your identity in Him is just to discipline yourself as much. to just crucify yourself, like what Jesus talks about, like your flesh, like what you want to do. Maybe scroll on TikTok for a few hours instead. Maybe get into your word. And I know it's super easy to say and a lot harder to do, but when you do those things, when you feel the urge to go do something that is contrary to what God would probably have you do, if you still choose to do what God wants you to do, that's when you'll find confidence, because you'll see that that's a much better pathway to go, is when you follow God and when you spend time with him more and when you just discipline yourself in general. So yeah, I think because I've been studying, I've been looking at a little bit of this idea of like finding confidence and finding joy and peace in your walk with God. And one of the things that God really spoke to me and that I had a revelation was about how much more satisfied in God will we be if we obeyed the first time, and we didn't like give room to hesitation, or we didn't have to, ask for forgiveness or, repent, but we just obeyed the first time. And I think even Pastor EJ, he spoke about that once, that really stuck out to me, is obeying the first time, not waiting the second time or the third time. But when we obey the first time, when we see God first of all, we'll most often find is that our confidence will grow just based on being obedient.
Come on.
Yeah, that's good. I was actually gonna say, I think that you can find your confidence and you can find who you are in being obedient. Like, I think obedience is freedom, honestly, and I know a lot of the times it's extremely like scary, or just like you're uncertain of what you being obedient might lead to. I've had a lot of times in the last year and in this year where I have been asked to do things, I've been asked to speak, and I've been asked to like be so pushed out of my comfort zone, and I've been obedient to it. And in that, I have found so much of myself in him, like knowing that I can't do this on my own, knowing that, Lord, I know I did not just do that by myself. Like, I know that was you. And that has just affirmed my confidence in him in being obedient to the things that he has asked me to do. And I know that it's definitely not easy to be obedient all the time, because a lot of the times it's something that you don't want to do or you never imagined yourself doing. But I think, and I always remember that he wouldn't ask you to do things, like if it comes from him, he wouldn't ask you to do things that he knows that he couldn't trust you with. If he knows that you couldn't do, if you fully surrender to him and you fully let him work through you. And I've been able to develop such a confidence in him and knowing that I can do absolutely anything that he wants me to do, because I've been obedient to him, and my life has been a testimony to being obedient and to being willing to do the things that he wants me to do, not because I have to, but because I want to. So
good.
Yeah.
Anything from you, Had?
I think for me, it's just the simple fact of it takes practice to feel confident in something. It takes trust. Your relationship with Jesus should be a two-sided thing. And so I think what you put in, you're going to get out. So if you're putting in the practice every day of, it takes, 7 days to make a habit? If you're putting in the practice of constantly trusting Jesus with, hey, here's how I feel. I think a lot of the times we're like, oh, Jesus already knows how I feel, I don't need to tell him. Well, for me, it's like, I feel like I should still confess everything. I should still tell him everything I'm going through, because he's my friend. He's my best friend, actually. So you should still be telling him everything. And within that, what you put in, you're going to get out. So I think for me, it's just practicing that and practicing my confidence in him. And when I have confidence in him, like, I feel like everything else will fall in line. It's going to take time. Like, you don't just trust someone. Like, if I had just met Bella, I wouldn't just immediately, like, trust her. Like, it would take time to build that trust. So I think through that and through time, for me, that's just what it is. And you'll see, he's never going to break your trust. He's not like a bad friend that's, like, one day going to be a great friend and the next he's just going to go tell everyone all your business. Like, it's not that. So... yeah.
I think it starts off as confidence and then it turns into Godfidence.
Oh,
you don't like that?
I thought of that when you said that, but I didn't want to say it because it's like kind of
it's
corny.
really one of those things, but that's a real thing. Like you start off like, in confidence or whatever, and you grow and you grow and you grow and you get to a place where now it's you and God, and in your walk with him, it becomes something that's more than just your own natural confidence, but it becomes a supernatural confidence. And so it's him putting his touch on it. So I think we're gonna wrap up, guys. I think we have just completed our first ever CRAVE podcast.
Let's go.
Come on, man. I feel like we need like a
confetti.
We need like a party. Ooh, that would have been cool to get like
Right?
some confetti and a party thing. Well, hey, listen, thank you so much for tuning in. My name's Pastor Brian, aka PB, and I'm the host today. And thank you guys so much for joining us again. Shout out to Bella, Hadli, and Grayson. And just believing for whatever God has next for you guys. It is going to be incredible. And thank you guys so much for joining us today. Thank you for tuning in. We love you. And we out.
We'll be the city.
Bye.
Go be the city.
Oh,
Be the
Yeah.
city.
yep.
CRAVE podcast for life, homie.
Play, 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 play.